From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast is Andre Johnson. Junior. Do not forget the Junior. Very important, remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you are watching us on YouTube, please do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And also, hello, Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here, and I hope you stay here and watch all of our content on this wonderful network we have started down here, the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, because we keep rolling right along, and there's going to be more where that came from once the real football season begins. It is Wednesday in the city of New Orleans. Speaking of that real football season, a real decision was made when it comes to your New Orleans Saints and the longest quarterback competition in the NFL. Of course, I'm talking about Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck. Of course, we're going to go there today. But first things first, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. You know, I went bowling this morning. Me and my parents are in the bowling league on Mondays now, so I had to get a little practice in, make sure I don't embarrass the Johnson family, because the Johnsons are a very big bowling family. But, you know, you mentioned a big decision. Tuesday, Kellen Moore finally announcing who's going to be the starting quarterback week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. The wait's finally over. The last man standing was Spencer Rattler, beating out Tyler Shuck for that QB1 spot. Now, if you watched the pod on Monday, you already know where Sean and I would have gone if we were making the decision. Kellen Moore doesn't care what we think. He's going to do what he thinks is right. He thinks Rattler is right. But, Sean, what do you make of that decision?
All right, so the Saints made the decision that, frankly, despite us saying we would have gone in the other direction, we were also very clear in thinking this was the way they were going to go, just based off the actions leading up to the game and then within the game. We all thought this was going to be the direction Kellen Moore chose. And after an incredibly long and after an incredibly thorough quarterback competition, and then even longer, because I thought this was going to come even sooner than it did, Spencer Rattler starts the season as starting quarterback. So what to make of this decision? Well, we know they battled to a draw. I think that's pretty obvious. I think that's pretty clear. It wouldn't have lasted this long if it wasn't a very real, very intense quarterback competition. They really could have went either way. And Kellen Moore chose to go with Rattler. As for the decision, it took a long time, mainly because, like I said, it was that close. Not just in the plays they made, but also the shortcomings each guy showed. I rewatched Kellen Moore's press conference again, just to try to do my best, because I was there live, obviously. Then went back and rewatched it again today, because sometimes when it's live, a lot of things are happening. So I went back and rewatched just to kind of see if I can pick up on a few things, and I actually did. It really sounds like, to me, what the deciding factor was for Moore was they feel like, at least initially, Rattler will make fewer mistakes. Maybe a little bit more down-to-down efficiency, not quite ready to tap into the quote-unquote big play potential of Tyler Shuck, because there may be some down-to-down inefficiency that could offset that. It was interesting to hear him he didn't come right out and say that, but if you listen to what he said, it certainly felt like that was a key component in this race. But it was definitely as close as we all thought it was. He didn't just talk Kellen Moore yesterday. By the way, he wasn't supposed to talk yesterday. It was supposed to just be coordinators. Then we get a message at noon saying he's going to talk at 1:45. And apparently he was ready to get something off his chest, and he did. Offensive coordinator Doug Nussmeier talk yesterday, and I had the final question in that press conference, and I asked him, did you expect it to be this close? And he said yesterday how many times throughout the process it felt like one guy was taking the lead, one guy was kind of running away with the thing, and then the other guy would swing back, and it was very interesting, and it kind of get it back down to a draw, or maybe swing the competition in another direction. And it was very interesting to hear Nussmeier confirm what we were kind of feeling on the outside looking in, that it has swung back and forth. And we don't know what's going on in those meetings, but clearly some of the discussions they were having were similar to some of the discussions we were having on the outside. Secondly, it's maybe a little controversial. No, I'm not going to say it. It's not controversial. It's just an opinion. The fact that it really dragged out, I mean, it really did. I mean, he could have done it Monday. He could have did it Sunday. He could have did it Saturday. He could have did it after the second preseason game, whatever. The fact that it dragged out this long leads me to believe that perhaps this was not an initial unanimous decision. Ultimately, Kellen Moore is the guy that has to make the call. That's why you hired him. But if he were consulting with his staff, I'd be willing to bet there's still strong support for Shuck inside that building to be the day one starter. Because felt like there was a lot of discussion and a lot of discussion and a lot of back and forth and a lot of things that can swing you back in either direction. And ultimately, he chose Spencer Rattler. But I still think there probably is some strong support for Shuck inside that building. Third, this is Rattler's moment, correct?
Yep.
He was named the starter. But doesn't it feel like the initial thought outside of him being named the starter is, yes, Rattler starts for now, but in the background is, when do they eventually turn to Tyler Shuck? That's what it kind of feels like, doesn't it?
That's what everybody's saying.
I
Hey,
hate
start
that.
Rattler for X amount of weeks.
I absolutely hate that. I hate that for both guys. I hate that for Spencer Rattler. I hate that for Tyler Shuck. But it is inevitably where the conversation has already gone and will continue to go throughout the season when you sort of set up this predicament. I know what Kellen Moore said. You heard it. They're not going to have a quarterback debate all season. That's fine if he don't want to have a quarterback debate all season, but I'm here to tell you that when the Saints turn to Shuck narrative is going to pop up after every loss and every subpar Rattler game. Those questions are coming unless, hey, Rattler can play well. Yeah. Rattler can play his butt off and keep Shuck on the bench. If that happens, great. Problem solved. You got an outlier. You got a fifth-round pick that was ready to make the move and become a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL. Great. If he keeps a second-round pick on the bench, then so be it. All problem solved. Side note, I know, look, people may have their perceptions of this show, whatever, but I really am pulling for Rattler to get a win. Like, people work really, really hard in the NFL. It's tough to take that many losses. So I'm really pulling for Rattler to get a win in some form or fashion. Even if he throws 4 interceptions, they win like 9-6. Who cares? I want to see that man start a game and get a victory. But ultimately, though, this is not the decision you and I would have made. We've been very clear on that. I think if it was close, and clearly it was, just go with Shuck, the second rounder, and they didn't do it. That's their call. Fine. Got to respect it. See if it becomes the right call. We'll never know if Shuck should have been the guy, but we'll find out soon if Rattler is the guy for how long. As for Shuck, I was around him for a few minutes yesterday as well. I wanted to share this with the audience as well because I was around him for a few minutes yesterday. Rattler spoke and Shuck spoke. He wasn't happy, but definitely not dejected. Look, and why do I say that? Because I have seen quarterback competitions and I have talked to those guys in the locker room minutes after the decision was made where you wanted this opportunity, you did not get it, you got passed over, and I have seen guys have the saddest look in their eyes you could possibly imagine. I did not see that with Tyler Shuck because you're in the locker room, now half the locker room is cheering on your teammate and kind of turning away from you, whatever the case may be. That happens in those competitions. But I didn't see a sadness or a dejected look when it comes to Tyler Shuck. He seemed to handle it way better than I guess, I don't know if I would have thought he would have, but he handled it better than I've seen in previous situations. He even complimented Kellen Moore, who, as I said, just passed him over. His own agent, interestingly enough, tweeted out, "I like the plan."
What's the plan?
I like the plan, with like handshake emojis.
Yeah.
So I believe Shuck knows his time is coming. How soon, we will find out. In the meantime, just for historical reference, I wanted to see who was the last second-round pick to be an opening day starter. First off, not as many second-round picks out there as you might think.
Yeah, especially at quarterback.
People don't, quarterbacks. Yeah. Not as many second-round quarterbacks as you might think. The last one to do so, you want to take a guess? I already told you this.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I already know the answer, but I can pretend not to know for the sake of it.
I will say it.
Who we got?
2017, DeShone Kizer for the Cleveland Browns. They were winless that season.
Mr. 0-16.
Before that, it was, wait for it.
You know him.
Wait for it. You know him. Some of y'all hate him. Derek Carr back in 2014. Before that, another NOLA connection. Andy Dalton back in 2011 for Cincinnati. So as much as we think it should have been Shuck, and I will stand by that opinion until proven otherwise. The truth is, it's actually very rare for a second-round pick to start on opening day. As for Rattler, this is important as well. You have an unreal opportunity that, frankly, not many second-year players with your draft stock and your resume get to have. I mean, not many people can say they got on the field as a fifth-round rookie. Not many people can say they were the starter the next year after going 0-6 as that rookie. Make the most of it, man. Take advantage of your opportunity. The ball's in your hands. You won the job now. Keep the job from here here throughout the season. And as for us, we'll sit back and watch how this thing all plays out. What say you?
Yeah, we'll be rooting for him, but I can't do revisionist history. Like I said on Monday, I would have made the decision to go with Shuck. Saints decide Rattler. I think they made the wrong decision. We'll see how it goes, but I will say one thing, especially to the Rat Pack. That is, I'm sure having barbecues and crawfish boils and everything right now. I'm glad that we can finally put Rattler Mania to rest one way or the other, because over the last year, there have been some people who have touted him as the future of this organization potentially. And there have been so many excuses to why he went 0-7 last year in games he played, 0-6 as a starter. They're all gone now. They said he didn't get to play with Olave, he didn't get to play with Shaheed, all the injuries. Well, week 1 when he comes out in the Dome against the Cardinals, Olave will be there, Shaheed will be there, Jawan Johnson will be there, Alvin Kamara will be there, all the weapons will be there. His offensive line was banged up. He's going to have at least 4 of 5 starters, maybe 5 of 5, depending on Trevor Penning's injury status, how close he is to making his comeback. So the offensive line is going to be healthy. Healthy weapons, healthy offensive line. The defense is healthy. And like everybody said, last year, he's a rookie. Not anymore. He had a full NFL offseason. He came out, and Kellen Moore, although I said on Monday, I don't think he's night and day a different quarterback than the guy who was losing games last year. Kellen Moore says he's seen improvement. I'm going to believe Kellen Moore. Right. If Kellen Moore says he's seen improvement, let's see improvement when he goes out there. All the excuses are gone. He's got his starters. He's got his weapons. He's got his line. He's got his defense. This is what the New Orleans Saints are. Spencer Rattler's at the helm. Let's see what he can do. Because I hope I'm wrong. I hope that by week 10 I'm saying, man, Spencer Rattler really did surprise us. He was the right choice. He's, brought some life into this city. The Saints are playing competitive football. We don't need Tyler Shuck right now. Let's roll with Rattler. We'll see how it goes, but, how long is that leash is ultimately what Kellen Moore is going to have to decide, because a couple months ago, when the NFL schedule released, we both did our record projections. You went 6-11. I went, I think, 4-13. I think I had them starting like 0-5, 0-6.
You did, yeah.
If the Saints are 0-5, 0-6 through the first month and a half of the season, do you keep rolling with Rattler? At that point, do you go to Tyler Shuck? How long is the leash that you stick with Spencer Rattler for? Because I think that's ultimately what's going to plague this season if it's not as successful for Rattler as, it may be. And I know people are going to say, this team isn't very good, because on paper, compared to the rest of the league, there's not high expectations for the Saints. I'm not necessarily judging Rattler this year off of wins and losses. I'm judging him off of how he looks, because it's possible to play well and your team just simply isn't good enough to win the game. If I leave a game and the Saints lost 32-25 and I say, Spencer Rattler really showed me something there, I'm okay with that. But if we're looking at a 35-0 like we saw in Green Bay last year, a loss to the Raiders like we saw last year, some of the game against the Broncos last year that he started in, the 2 turnovers against the Bucks, games like that, the cries for Tyler Shuck are going to get louder and louder.
And look, by going this direction, clearly Kellen Moore is okay with that. He's okay with that. And you got to trust him. You brought him in here. He's a quarterback guy. He's a former quarterback, a young head coach, who played that position not that long ago, a recognizable name so these guys can somewhat connect with. If he feels he's the guy and he has his reasons, you roll with it. I do think there's I think the competition ended up being closer probably than they anticipated, and perhaps at some point someone would have declared themselves the winner just by their superior play. And the fact that it lasted this long tells me that they did not, and they really were down to okay, what can I do with this guy? What can I do with that guy? Who gives me the best chance to win? Is it Shuck's big arm, ability to run the zone read? Is it Rattler's ability to extend plays and maybe a little quicker processor and a little more down efficiency? They will probably have those discussions throughout the last week and a half, and ultimately they landed on Rattler. But the narrative has already been set up. I did a radio show yesterday after it happened, and they were asking me, at what point do you think Shuck ultimately gets in? I was like, I don't know, but now that question is going to be there the entire season unless Rattler just blows everybody away and all of a sudden he has, he's putting up numbers, they're winning games, the offense is flowing, which could certainly happen.
We hope it does.
And if that does happen, that will lead to more of the Saints winning games. But in Rattler's case, you mentioned something about, not necessarily judging him on wins and losses. I think I want to see him play well enough to give his team a chance to win. Yeah. And if I'm being honest about last year, this was us talking about a rookie, Spencer Rattler, who got in probably a little too soon before he was ready, and it was not the perfect set of circumstances, but just actually grading the tape of him last year, watching him play, he did not play a game for 4 quarters good enough to win a game.
Correct.
He didn't just lose all the games. Other than the second half where he came in, where he didn't necessarily start, he did not start that game. He didn't play well enough in any of his starts to give his team a chance to win. He had little spurts here and there. That is nowhere near good enough in the NFL. So if there is tangible growth, that's where it has to start. From small spurts of success to 4-quarter game, giving your team a chance to win games. And if he does that, at some point it'll turn for him and he will win games. Because I'm telling you, even if he plays well or better than last year, if the losses follow him, that's going to become a stigma attached to him if it goes a long time without winning a start. But I will say this. I think they can win week 1. I really think they can win week 1 with Spencer Rattler at the helm. I think Arizona is a very beatable opponent. I think there's a sense of mystery when it comes to Kellen Moore. I think they're healthier in certain spots, especially offensively. I think they're better in certain spots offensively. I think they're a little more set up for success early in the season for Rattler as opposed to him entering midseason and a lot of injuries last year. Even though there were a lot of injuries, but he did have key players at different times. He won't have Taysom to start this year, but he'll have Olave, he'll have Shaheed, he'll have I'm going to call the offensive line decent right now because I don't know how great they're going to be because we haven't seen them all together, but I'm hoping it's going to be better than decent. But ultimately, I think he'll be set up for success, and Kellen Moore knows that. I think Kellen Moore is a smart enough game planner to understand what he has to do to give Spencer Rattler the best chance to succeed. If he does that, then he keeps Tyler Shuck on the bench for perhaps longer than we were all anticipating. If he doesn't, the cries or the questions or the urge to put the rookie in is just going to crank up tenfold because you draft him in the second round. And that was such a statement for not just – look, any franchise is a big statement. But for this franchise, one that had never done it, and it's the highest drafted quarterback since Archie Manning, it was a huge statement that they made. So we'll see how the situation all plays out.
Yeah, you mentioned the wins and the losses, and I've been going back and forth because it's like – on one hand, I think about Bryce Young at the end of the season last year when he finally figured it out and he was playing good football. During that stretch, they lost to the Chiefs. They lost to the Eagles. They lost to the Bucks. And it took about 5 touchdowns from Bryce Young to beat the Falcons. But watching those games, watching how he looked in those games, we could say, okay, Panthers 1-3 in those games down the stretch. Bryce Young looked really good.
Better, yeah.
They were playing competitive football, which is something Bryce Young was not doing in his rookie year and early in the second year. That's why he got benched. Now I'm looking at Spencer Rattler. I want to see them play competitive football because whether you start Rattler, whether you start Shuck, I thought this was a 4 or 5 win team regardless of who's playing. I've been on the record saying I think the future of this Saints franchise is probably in a college classroom somewhere, getting ready to go to practice right now. So I don't think it's a very good team as it's currently constructed. So I don't want to say, Spencer Rattler didn't go 9-8. He didn't win 7 games. It was a failure, I want to see the Saints be competitive in games. I want to see him give people a reason to come to the Dome, a reason to cheer, a reason to, potentially continue to believe that Rattler might be the future of this franchise if he could figure some things out. But, like you said, there is a second-round rookie on the bench. Rattler is 0-7, so I brought up a scenario earlier. What if he starts 0-5, 0-6? Then you're looking at a guy who's 0-11 in his first 11 games. How long do you stick with that guy? We'll see, but I want to see him play competitive football, and if he can do that, if he can keep the Saints in games, because he doesn't have to throw 40 times to do that. This is going to be a running team.
I don't think if he's throwing 40 times, they're not winning.
Yeah, you're losing that game. So, I want to see him play good enough to at least let these games be competitive, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, and that's fair. And as we stand here, we're not surprised at the decision. We probably would have tapped in a little more to the upside, I guess, of Shuck early because of the drafting and the contract and all that stuff. But this is the way they want to go. I didn't feel like there was a wrong answer. I mean, both guys, like I said, both guys did enough to lose the job, is what I always say. I don't know if I don't think either guy did enough to win the job. I think both guys did enough to lose the job. So they're rolling with Rattler. So we'll see how he goes. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what he's able to do. I'll say this. If Olave and Shaheed stay healthy, that's not bad. Vele, I think, is a guy that can produce. Juwan Johnson is a competent tight end. I wouldn't put him in the top 10 in the league, but he's a competent tight end. If the offensive line is at least stable, you got Kamara. There's some things there where you're not just going to be a totally inept offense. I think you can be a somewhat competent offense. It's not going to be a great offense, but I think you can be somewhat competent. And I think whoever's the quarterback, obviously start the season is going to be Rattler, will at least have some foundational pieces in place to help that young player be successful.
I agree. And now we've talked about guys who made the team and got secured spots yesterday, but there were also a lot of guys who were cut yesterday or released or waived, whatever term you want to use for that player. Some of the biggest names, quarterback Jake Haener, edge rusher Isaiah Foskey. We saw Nephi Sewell get released. We saw running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire get released. Were there any big surprises for you? Not just guys who got released, but maybe guys who stayed on the team.
Yeah, it was a couple, honestly. The Jake Haener thing didn't surprise me because it felt like that last week and a half. It felt like when you saw injuries in other places, you started to really look towards, do they really have to keep 3 on the active roster? What's interesting is they brought Hunter Deckers back, according to reports, and Jake Haener back on their practice squad. So that's 2 quarterbacks on the practice squad. Okay, so they did that. Haener's body language the last week and a half was the look of a defeated guy. Yeah. He was in the competition. Clearly, he was told early on, and by the reps he was getting, he was out of the competition. And that is a confident guy. And it's like he deflated a little bit. He was not the same player on the field, didn't carry himself the same way. But nonetheless, he's back on the practice squad. Isaiah Foskey needed to happen. It needed to happen. I don't know if he returns to the practice squad. I was told he wasn't at this point, but that could certainly change by the time you watch this podcast. He's just not the player. He's just not the guy. You just got to move on. You didn't draft him, move on. And look, that was not some Marcus Davenport where it was a small school guy that had some traits. You were tapping into some raw potential. That was a guy that was wildly productive at Notre Dame. Was the all-time leading sack leader?
At Notre Dame.
At Notre Dame. That was a wildly successful player. The one, though, that caught me off guard a little bit was Fadil Diggs.
Yes.
I thought he did enough to earn a roster spot. He was the only draft pick to get released on cut day. Now, he may end up getting back at some point. But I felt like his versatility to play edge, to play stack, he's very active. He seems to have a high motor. He's got some athleticism. That was the one that probably caught me off guard the most of all the roster moves.
I wrote 2 surprises down. Fadil Diggs was number 1 because he's somebody who Cam Jordan knows defensive linemen. He complimented him very early on in the process, compared him to Brian Brzee. And then Fadil Diggs at times popped, in the preseason against the Chargers, against the Jaguars. We saw him on the field. We saw him around the ball. So him getting cut was a bit of a surprise. But as a 7th-round draft pick, that's probably somebody who you can potentially bring back to the practice squad. Another surprise isn't necessarily who got cut. It's somebody who made the team because I thought he was out of here. And that's Cedric Wilson Jr. Don't forget the junior. Cedric Wilson, he had the big drop on the last drive with Tyler Shuck. He hasn't exactly been great in the preseason this year. He didn't really stand out last year where there were opportunities for him to stand out when those injuries started mounting up. So I expected the Saints to move on from a veteran in Cedric Wilson, but maybe it's the fact that he's a veteran, the knowledge that he brings to a relatively young receiver room with, Tipton, Olave, Vele, and Shaheed in there. I don't know, but I was a bit surprised to see the Saints keep so many receivers, including Cedric Wilson.
Well, they claimed one from Trey Palmer today.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Trey Palmer from Kentwood, went to LSU, finished at Nebraska. That's a speedster, another speed guy.
Right.
So that's 7. So there's going to have to be some roster move there. And by the time you watch this pod, there may have already been a roster move within that wide receiver room, because that's a lot of receivers, and they don't need that many wide receivers, especially when you're thin in some other areas. But all in all, I felt like it was fairly straightforward. I saw Rico Payton got claimed, DeMarco Jackson got claimed by the Bears. So you lost 2 guys. So other than those 2, you can pretty much bring all the guys you want back to the practice squad on your practice squad. They'll have an opportunity to do so. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is another one. I felt like he was going to get caught in the numbers, get squeezed a little bit, because he outplayed Devin Neal. There's no doubt about that. And I think right now he's the better player. But Devin Neal's a draft pick, and he got injured. And when he got on the field, again with the 2s and 3s, he looked decisive, and he convinced me that they're not going to give up on him yet, and they're going to take their chances with try to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire at some point back on the team.
Yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a veteran, a very good blocker despite his size. He's a smaller back, but, he had the big block that freed Tyler Shuck up to make that deep shot to Mason Tipton in that first preseason game against the Chargers. So, we'll see if Clyde Edwards-Helaire can make his way back here. But, yeah, Devin Neal, the potential for a young back like that who thrived in the SEC, you can't give up on that too soon, because if you let him go, somebody else probably would have claimed him.
Yeah, he would have gotten claimed. So, cutdown day is come and gone. It's not the final 53. It's the first 53, and there's going to be changes all week through the weekend into and up to the first game, regular season game, next Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. Should be fun. We'll be there, no doubt about it. All right, we got to get out of here. That was fun. For Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.